Last week we told you about the Athens Marathon.
This week we're going to tell you about the stadium where that race ends. Hi everyone, welcome to Around the World with Joshua and Alyssa, episode 140. Yep, I know. What are we going to do at 150?
Something fun?
It's still 10 weeks away, we'll figure it out. As for today, I promised you last week that if you came back, I was going to tell you about the stadium where the Athens Marathon ends, and that's what we're going to do. So I showed you this picture last week.
Oh, do you want to see it?
Yeah. Can we show it to them?
I can see it.
So we showed you this picture last week of where the marathon ends, and that stadium is a well-known stadium in Athens called the Panathenaic Stadium. And it is called that because on that site where this now stands, there was a old race course, like 2,300 some years ago.
Foot race course?
Yes. It was there, and it was the place where the Panathenaic Games were held. So in 330 BC, there was a stadium built here, and it was built for these games, which are similar to the Olympic Games. If you don't know much about the games in Greece, there were more than just the Olympic Games. There were all sorts of games that took place, and they were similar, but they had different names. And the ones that took place here were the Panathenaic Games. And this stadium was rebuilt about almost 500 years later after the original stadium was built here in 144 AD, and it was built entirely out of marble, and it could hold about 50,000 seats. Now today, a stadium that can hold 50,000 people is pretty decent sized. Now 1900 years ago, a stadium that could hold 50,000 people was huge.
Big deal.
So this stadium then it stuck around for a couple hundred years, but then with the rise of Christianity, it was mostly abandoned. The reason was because these Panathenaic Games were in honor of one of the goddesses of Greek mythology. And so once Christianity started to rise, people weren't as interested in these games in honor of these false gods. And so the stadium wasn't used much anymore. Well, in 1869, this stadium was excavated, and they found it there, and they refurbished the whole thing to see what you see today. So what you see today is very, very, very closely resembling that which was built in 144 AD.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Pretty old.
And it is today made 100% of marble.
Which is why it's so bright in
just
the
like
daylight.
the original. Yeah. And so you look at that, and you can't really tell, but once you get really close and you start looking at the rock, you're like, oh yeah, that's definitely marble. So that's really neat. It was all refurbished in the late 1800s, and then in 1896, it hosted the opening and closing ceremonies of the first modern Olympics as we know them today. They still weren't exactly what we have see them today, because at that time there was only 9 sports. Now we have a lot more during our Summer Olympics. But when it opened again in 1896 for the modern Olympics, that's what took place. And it was also used again in 2004 for the Athens Olympics. And this is a view from the end that's not open. So it's open on one end, and on this end also there are these 2 seats, and I was told that this is where the emperor would sit. And And so when we were there, I'm not sure where the pictures went, but we took a couple pictures of us sitting in those seats. It was kind of fun to do. And here's a picture of some of our marathon runners at the top, at the end of the Panathenaic Stadium. And there's our little family.
Aww. There we are.
All 4 of us, but you can only see 3. But it was really neat to drive by this thing and then to go stand in it because it's so full of history and significance, especially when you think about the Olympic Games. This is, in a sense, where our modern Olympics got restarted.
And it can hold a lot of people because I went in there to watch the marathon runners finish, but it filled up really fast.
Yeah.
And it was so bright and so loud with all of the sound equipment and then the sun shining on all that marble.
Yeah.
Made your eyes hurt.
And it's really hard to get a picture to show just how large it is. My pictures, I could kind of show you how wide and deep it was, but only because I had a really, really, really wide angle lens. Other people who went up there to take pictures, they would have to...
You have to take like multiple pictures.
Yeah, like do a panorama with their phone because it's just massive.
Yeah, it is really big. Very cool though.
Yeah.
Okay, I have the last part of our story about John and Isabel. And let's talk about it today. So they finally made it to the Lisu people up in the mountains. And at the end of our story, though, we were talking about how China was at war with Japan. This is during World War II. And the fighting got so bad that all of the missionaries, including John and Isabel, couldn't stay in the country anymore. They had to leave China, which was sad to them. They loved the people that they were working with, and they had made so many good relationships and built so many friendships with the people. But as soon as the war was over, John and Isabel got right back to living in China and back to serving with the people. Isabel was so happy to see all of her friends again, all the Lisu people that she had left behind. But at the same time, the Chinese Communist government was kind of slowly moving through the country and taking over different areas. And as the communists would take over an area, they would tell the people that they couldn't worship God anymore and that they could only practice the religion of the state. And so then it got harder and harder for people to be able to worship God. But John and Isabel decided they were going to stay with the Lisu people as long as they possibly could until the communists took over. And John did a lot of traveling. And so Isabel was left home a lot. And she would hear rumors about the communists maybe coming in, and she would have to think about them and make decisions. But she kept the rainy Bible school going, so they still could teach people during the rainy season. And God kept protecting her and protecting both of them. And after 3 years, though, the communists did move into the area, and so then it wasn't safe for John and Isabel to live there anymore. And so all the missionaries from their area were sent from China to a nearby country. They were sent to the country of Thailand. And they were so excited because when they got there, they found that there were so many people from the mountains and so many people from other parts of China that had tried to escape communism, that they found even a group of Lisu people in Thailand that they could keep ministering to. So God still brought them to the people that they knew they should be telling about the gospel. So they enjoyed that, and they were able to help the people. And they went back to America and told other people about how they could pray for the Chinese Christians and for the different people groups. And it was such a blessing to them to be able to tell other people, so then people knew like specifically how they could pray. And they enjoyed their time in Thailand a lot. But after a little bit, Isabel found out that she had cancer, and they decided the best way for her to get treatment was to come back to America. And by this time, their children were grown. Catherine and Danny were grown-ups, and so Isabel went back stateside to live with them for a little bit, and then John moved back too. But while she had been in China, Isabel had started writing down some of the stories of the Lisu people and the stories of people that they got to minister to, and she began to write books. And so when she came back and she was here in America for her cancer treatments, she kept working on those books as a way to keep telling the stories that they had learned while they were in China. But in March of 1957, Isabel Kuhn died. But she kept all these memories in these books, and you can actually read them today. You could search for her name on Google and see some of these books and read some of the stories of the ways God provided for them and the amazing stories of people coming to trust Jesus. And God used her. He used her in her desire to serve him, and used her to share the good news of the gospel with lots and lots of people and to encourage people to be missionaries. Now, maybe some of you guys might want to be missionaries someday. And maybe some of you are like, I don't think I could really be a missionary. But you know what? It's still your job to tell other people about Jesus. Even if you're not going to somewhere super far away, it's still part of your job as a believer. And so you should be looking out for ways to tell other people. So who's somebody you think you could tell about Jesus this week? Just like Isabel, she just used things she loved, and God used that in her life to bring her to just the right people group where she got to share Jesus' love with them. So see if you can think about that. Who's somebody that you can talk to about Jesus this week? And just be like the Coons and share it with people around you. So that is our missionary story about Isabel Coon and John. And here's a nice map of China where they were. And down here is Thailand. So that kind of helps you think about. So here's China. Here's the province where they were, where the least of people were, and then here's Thailand down here. So it was pretty close once they left China to find somewhere else to minister to those people. So yeah, that is our missionary story.
Thank you for sharing that one with us.
Mm-hmm. I remember reading her biography when I was in elementary school. I really liked all the ones that were like China and India and all of Asia. Mm-hmm. I remember those ones best.
Well, with this being our 5th week in a small series, we are going to review the last 4 weeks of ministries that we have told you about. And they are all based in Athens. And the first one here is the Skills Training Center in Athens. And as we told you, we couldn't show you all the people who work there. That's why we just have a picture of threads. But this is a place that God is using to help train women who need a new life. Mm-hmm. And so their main goal is that people would get saved. And it kind of all started with a Bible study and evolved into this whole big thing where they help women learn an occupation and skills and trades that they can then support their families with and use it in other places. So that is the Skills Training Center. We also told you about Voice of Truth, which is also known as Athens Baptist Church. And it is a church that has now been around for several years. And they have services on Sunday both in English/Greek and also in the afternoon in Farsi, because they have a lot of Persian refugees. And God has used this place to see many people come to Christ, especially among the Persian refugees. And a praise for them is that they just opened up a new building right next to their existing one. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure now, it's been over 6 months. Maybe they've been able to break down the wall between the two so that they're connected. Not sure. But that is Voice of Truth, and so you can pray that God would keep using their ministry there and expanding it, and praise Him for what He's already done.
Then we talked about Nea Zoe, which stands for New Life, and that's based out of Athens, Greece. We talked about how this ministry seeks to help get women out of a bad lifestyle and then point them to Jesus, but then to give them hope that they don't have to live in that lifestyle anymore. And it's really closely tied with the ministry we talked about last week, which is Race for New Life. That was where those people from the U.S. who really like to run got together and they raised money to help support Nea Zoe, and then they ran in the marathon or the 10K. And so that's a cool way that we talked about how God can use something that you like to do to support other people.
And I don't think we mentioned it last week, but the Race for New Life raised, I think, over $40,000 for Nea Zoe.
Yeah.
And so they were able to have an impact that way, but then also just tell people about the ministry so more people know what's going on and how God is using it. And even since then, we've heard of at least one, maybe two other instances where women have been able to come out of that other life and get started on new life, something much better. And so that's a huge praise. And so as you think of it, pray for them, because there are people every week going into these places, these dark places in Athens, and helping women and families that are lost and don't even know that life could be so much better. And so pray for them for wisdom and for safety, and for these people that they would see the light and want to come to Christ and experience the new life in Him.
Thanks so much for watching. Come back next time for a new missionary story and some more probably about Greece, because we got lots to share.
Probably.
And some other kind of ministry.
Yep. Thank you again. We will see you next time.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.